We just go with the flow. Hi everyone, I'm Deborah Rose with Realty One Group in beautiful Payson, Arizona. Thank you for joining the talk show, courtesy of the illustrious Cameron Davis of Razor Thin Media. He always sticks his fingers there so you could see him. So anyways, I'm really excited. First off, I want to address and let you all know that our former Sheriff Joe Arpaio will be rescheduling in January, and we apologize that he's not here today, but it's all good because we have a very special guest, one of my favorite people in Payson, and it happens so quickly. How do you get so lovable in a town that you've lived in for what, 2 years?
Yeah, about 2 years.
Yeah. So Charlie Seraphin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
It's so nice to have you.
It's a mutual admiration society.
Oh, good. And for those of you that might know, may not know, because we have watchers from all over the country and maybe even the world, who knows, but you just took over the job of hosting a radio talk show at KMOG, and that's how we've developed a relationship. Tell us a little bit about your background first, will you, please?
Well, I escaped from prison, so I'm glad the sheriff isn't here, and I've been on the run for a long time.
Here we go.
Here we go. My background, well, my media background has to do with growing up in a small town that was surrounded by an Indian reservation and national forests. I don't know if you can believe that or not, but it was about half the size of Payson. It's called Rhinelander, but actually we lived outside town. We lived in Pine Lake, which is a suburb. Well, we don't really call them suburbs.
What? Suburb of what?
Suburb of Rhinelander. So
is that in Germany, or is that?
It's in northern Wisconsin. It's in the frozen tundra, and it was extremely cold there. But we had beautiful summers both weeks, and I got started in radio when I was 14 years old, which is another long story I'm not going to tell right now. But I worked through high school, and then I went to college, and I worked through college, and I got out of college, and I went to my first major market, which was Milwaukee. That was the biggest city in Wisconsin, and I left there quickly because it was still cold, and I kept heading south and went to Miami, and I worked in Miami as a news director, and then I went to San Francisco, and I worked as a newsman and a news director there and a program director, and I went to Los Angeles, and I worked as a general manager and ran the CBS FM station in Los Angeles, which for all of our listeners around the globe was KNX FM at the time. And then I went to Dallas and I ran KRLD, which is the Heritage News Talk station in Dallas, Texas. And then I went back to San Diego and I ran two radio stations, two music stations in San Diego. And then I got out of radio and I went into professional sports and I worked for the Texas Rangers. Well, first I worked for a small company that taught athletes how to talk. And that was really fun.
Why? Do they just grunt a lot, or why?
Well, they do, and what we did is we taught them how to grunt in English.
Jeez. Oh my God.
And
that's not very nice. I'm sorry for all of you professional athletes. No pun. No, I'm sorry. We're just joking
they
around.
were awesome, but a lot of times they don't handle interviews well. So we taught them how to conduct an interview and how to be the subject of an interview, and make light of yourself, which I'm probably better at teaching.
You're very good at doing too.
So and then I went to work for the Texas Rangers Baseball Club, and I worked there for 5 years as the chief revenue officer, I guess, the vice president of sales, marketing, and all things money related. Then I went to Kansas City and worked for the Kansas City Royals.
Wow.
For 5 years, same position. And I ran an NBA Development League basketball team in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I worked for the Hunt family that owns the NFL Kansas City Chiefs, the defending champions of the National Football League. And they also, at that time, owned 3 Major League Soccer teams. They're down to 1 now. They just own the Dallas franchise. So I worked in professional hockey. I worked in baseball, basketball, football, soccer, all the sports. So that was my professional sports background. And I retired to Payson, Arizona, a lovely place. I don't know if you've Oh, you do know.
Yeah, I've been here a little bit.
So came to Payson, and we just love it here. It's a wonderful thing. And I got recruited to go to the radio station, the local radio station, and host the Forum, which is Monday through Friday at 9 until 10. And it's wonderful for me because I get an opportunity to meet all of the illustrious people of Payson, like yourself. And
big fish in a little pond is
yeah,
what we are.
A little fish in a little pond, but
Yeah.
I do get an opportunity to meet lots of really interesting people, and we have some awesome folks who live here in this little town, and so I get to interview them and ask them questions and ask them where they're from and what they're all about.
So what's your favorite question to ask people when you have them on the forum with you?
I like to ask people where they were born.
Why?
Because I think a lot of times where you're born has a lot to do with who you are. Mm-hmm. And people who are born in different places, Cameron, for example, was born in a small town, mm-hmm. and we know that. And people who are born in small towns are different than people that are born in big towns. People that are born in major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles or New York or Chicago have certain characteristics that they carry with them through their lives, even though they say, well, I only lived there till I was 8 and then we moved someplace else. But it still tends to impact your behavior and who you are.
Mm-hmm. So going back to what you said, growing up in a tiny little town, half the size of Payson, surrounded by national forest and a tribal reservation, just like Payson. Do you think that in some strange way you wanted your ending to be like your beginning? And I'm not saying it's your end, by the way, but
yeah, I'm pretty much ready for it. It's a lighthearted question, but I think that to give you a serious answer, one of my strong beliefs is that we should be prepared for death. We don't talk about death very much. It's kind of a morbid subject and people aren't comfortable. But I think that getting your life in order and taking care of all of the outstanding issues that you have, not just financial and real estate planning and all those kinds of things, but spiritual and emotional, those are really important things to have lined up. And so, yeah, if I hope to live, for a little bit longer, mm-hmm. maybe, however long it works. Yeah. But I like to think that I'm ready if my number gets called.
Yeah, you're a fascinating individual. I mean, you sped through like what a legacy of working with all these teams and the Hunt family and being in media, being in radio. I mean, you skimmed right over that, but I know you to be a very deep human being, and you've written a book called One Stupid Mistake, and I believe you're writing another book, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And what impressed me about that book was how deep you went into the psyche and the heart of your experiences. And I told you that on, I think it was page 63, that you...
64.
64, I'm sorry, 64, it was 64. That you said that you covered for one man's mistake, and it would have been a devastatingly costly mistake. So do you want to just embellish on that just a little bit and I'd like people to buy your book because I think it's just a really easy read. It's fascinating, and you make a lot of very potent, deep thinking statements that are very helpful.
I've been so blessed to have a lot of experiences in addition to the rundown that I gave you for my professional career. I had the opportunity to study in London for a year and travel through Europe, and I had the opportunity to take a sabbatical. It wasn't a real sabbatical, but I called it that, and go back and live in Spain. And when I lived in Spain, I lived on a small island in the Mediterranean. And while I was there, one day walking down the street, I saw on the sidewalk, it's every person's dream, you're walking down the street and you look down and here's a wad of money with rubber bands around it. And it was huge. It was a large amount of money. And I picked it up, I looked around, there was no one there, no one saw me. I had my son with me. And as I went, I kind of went through the bills a little bit, and they were large bills, and it was somebody's, it looked like a down payment on a house is what that was the thinking. And I knew it was a considerable amount of money. And my son was in a hurry. We were going to go buy a toy or something. And he said, let's go. And I went, no, we have to wait here. So I just leaned against the building and I stood there for a while. And I saw this individual coming about a block and a half away. And it was him. It was his money. He was in such a panic, and the look on his face was incredible. And as he came, and he was looking down and looking everywhere and going, oh, he was totally stressed out. And so as he came closer, I approached him and I walked up and I just handed the money to him. And he was speaking in Spanish, and I know some Spanish and a little bit conversant, but I couldn't keep up. He was going so fast, and he was hugging me, and then he was trying to give me money, and I said, no, you don't have to give me money, and it's all good and everything. And he was just, it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
And one you wouldn't forget.
Well, and that's a testament to your character, and what I think a lot about these days, and I'm sure you do too, as well as many intelligent people, is that character counts. And they used to teach classes way back when, I remember, about character and how important it is to treat other people the way that you would like to be treated. So in that lesson, I think the most potent lesson you gave your son was to be kind, and that character matters. Does your son ever talk about that story? Does he even remember it?
Real vaguely, and we've talked about it a couple of times. Actually, he read the book and he said, "Oh yeah, I kind of sort of remember it, but not really," because he was pretty young.
So one stupid mistake in it. What's the number one stupid mistake?
Well, that kind of gives it away. It's in the last chapter. But I think, though, number one, and there is no number one stupid mistake. The point of the book was, we'll go back and I'll tell you about the genesis of it. Okay. So I had this idea of writing. I've always been a writer. I used to write news, so I wrote a lot of news stories. And I had this idea of writing some essays about mistakes and how people learn from their mistakes. So I set out to ask as many strangers as I could find, and friends and family, and anyone I came in contact with for a period of about a year, a little over a year. So I would meet someone new and I go, "Oh, hi, Deborah, nice to meet you. Hey, would you mind sharing a mistake with me that you learned a lesson from?" And what I found out is that even my brother said, "I'll get back to you on that." People don't want to talk about their mistakes. I couldn't get people to, there were a few, and they were very poignant. The ones who did share them shared really deep, emotional stories about things that happened in their lives. A woman who got pregnant and decided to keep the baby, but she wasn't married, and things like that. But most people, I would say 98%, were really almost offended by the idea of sharing a mistake. So I gave that up and I went, okay, this is not happening. I can't write that particular story. So I asked the question differently, and I said, do you have a quiet little voice that tells you when you're about to do something you shouldn't do?
Oh, yeah.
And every single person, rich people, poor people, old people, young people, agnostics, atheists, people of faith, every single person did. Sometimes they would say, well, I call it something different, but everybody knew what I was talking about. So then I put the two together and I said, if we have a mechanism internally in ourselves that tells us when we're about to do something that we know we shouldn't do, why do we do things that we know we shouldn't do? And it's called cognitive dissonance. And that is that even though your brain tells you that you shouldn't do it, sometimes you do it anyway. You consciously or unconsciously do things that are not a part of your character. And so I set out to tell stories in the book, short stories, about decisions, people making decisions. And pretty much the chapters are real short. So pretty much every time you start the story, you can figure out, well, I know where this one's going to end up. This is not going to end well. And you can see, but I was trying to show the thought process of how we go through making decisions, good decisions and bad decisions. And I've been blessed. A lot of people have read the book. It has wonderful reviews, and I never knew about reviews, but it's probably got 65 or more reviews on Amazon, so that's kind of cool. And people write in and say nice things, and the people that I've talked to about reading the book all seem to find one thing that they grasp onto and they say, I really related to this because I had a situation in my life when this happened, and this is how it worked out, and so it's kind of fun. It's been a real, it's been a wonderful blessing, and I didn't know, I'd never written a book. I didn't even intend to write a book. I didn't start to write a book. But so back to your original question, sorry for the long answer, the one mistake, I think, the biggest mistake is not having a faith structure. And so you don't have to believe in God the way I believe in God. You don't have to pray the way I pray. You don't have to do what anyone else does. But every person should have their own individual faith structure. That which they believe in, that which they hold sacred, and that which provides them with the moral compass to be able to make good decisions so they don't make stupid mistakes.
Yeah, because it's a chain reaction, isn't it? The more stupid mistakes you make in your life, the more devastating consequences, because it builds momentum. You know, the law of quantum physics kicks in, and you can't avoid the momentum of your life sometimes. And so I believe that. I think people, especially in this trying, difficult year, if you don't have faith, what do you have? And hopelessness, I think, kicks in, and desperation, and a sense of not belonging, and all those negative things that you kind of feed on, and out of that negativity breeds more negativity. Is that basically what you're saying?
Sure. And so often when we make a mistake, if we don't take responsibility for it immediately, and we don't say, hey, I did it, I screwed up, it was my fault, what happens is we push it further back into our consciousness. We're aware of it. We know that it's there. But if we don't deal with it right away, I use the analogy of a sliver. It's like a sliver. If you get a sliver in your finger and you take it out right away, it might hurt a little bit, but it kind of goes away and it heals up quickly and you're okay. But if you have a sliver in your finger and you don't take it out and you leave it there, it becomes infected, and pretty soon it's very painful. And then the process of getting it out is even more painful, and it just, you know, the whole situation is exacerbated.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to happen. So when you make a mistake, admit it, even though it may be uncomfortable and it may be kind of hard. It's so much better, and you feel so much better after you admit it and say, it was me, I'm the one, you know, who broke the dish? Well, I did. I broke the dish. I didn't mean to break the dish, but I broke the dish. And it's so much better than, I don't know, you know, maybe someone came in the middle of the night and broke the dish.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. And what it really is fostering is a lack of accountability. And when you start living your life, and this is the non-character trait we were mentioning earlier, you start blaming other people. You start pointing the finger. I didn't do it. So if I didn't do it, Cameron did it. And Cameron goes, I didn't do it. Charlie did it. And then you're on this, what I call drama triangle. When you study psychology like I do, you never get off the wheel, because you're either the perpetrator, you're the victim, or you're just the accuser. And all you do is stay on this rat wheel, and you're in a prison. You're in an emotional prison. And so the lack of accountability is something that we see rampant, especially in the political arena, where no one wants to, you know, fess up and say, you know, we messed up, we're sorry. Making it right would be the next step, and you can't make it right until you admit that you were wrong.
Exactly.
Isn't that the funny part about it? And I don't know what we're so afraid of, but it's very liberating and very freeing, like you said, when you admit it up front, like, I broke the dish. I'm not going to blame anyone else. It was me. And now we can move forward. We don't have to spin this nasty web of lies and betrayal and blame, right?
Exactly.
So if you want to buy Charlie's book, where do they find it, Charlie?
Amazon. It's on Amazon. One Stupid Mistake. Type in One Stupid Mistake and it'll take you right to it.
One Stupid Mistake.
Read the reviews. I mean, it's probably not for everybody. It's a real short book. It's 128 pages. It's a 2-hour read, and it's real quick. But I set it up so that you could read a couple of pages. I could say it's a great toilet book, because you can take it into the bathroom and you can read 2 or 3 pages, which is a chapter. You don't have to start at the beginning even. You can pick it up anywhere, because all the stories are self-contained and don't rely on previous stories. So you don't have to read it chronologically. And
It's a great book, and everyone needs it because we all make stupid mistakes, or at least one stupid mistake or two. But if we're honest with ourselves, we all make mistakes, and it's better to learn from it because here's the thing. It makes you human. It makes you relatable. There's nothing worse than a person that is Mr. or Mrs. Can't Be Wrong. And they just go around perpetuating this dynasty of arrogance and pride.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
And the beautiful thing about mistakes is it makes us humble. We learn from them, and we have to admit that we're human, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you.
So great job writing the book. I love it, and so will you. And talk to us then about your second book.
My second book is called Finding Your Personal Brand.
Ooh.
And it's the same kind of concept, but in Finding Your Personal Brand, I focus more on authenticity, which is what we were just talking about. So after you've made your mistake and admitted it, I believe, it's a personal philosophy, that each person, before they're even born, has an authentic self, the I that is them. In Christian terms, we call it the soul. And that authentic self exists before you're born, throughout your life, and after you're dead. It still exists. So that's your legacy. If you just want to, say death is the end of it, which I don't believe it is, but some people do. If it is, that's okay. It's your legacy. So the consistency of your brand from beginning to end is really critical to your success in life. And the further you get away from the essence of who you are and your authentic, your personal brand, the more problems you have. And in our world today, it's really been affected tremendously by technology. And I'm not anti-technology. I believe that technology is a wonderful tool and we can all use it effectively. But it's gotten to the point where some people have given up on their personal brand and they only have their virtual brand. They have the person that exists in the selfies that they take with celebrities and go, look at me, how important I am, but it doesn't really reflect who they are. So I've tried to give, it's got 23, again, very short chapters. I know that people have short attention spans, so the idea is, if you write a book, don't make people read it from beginning to end in order to get meaning out of it. If they can just read a couple of pages and get a little bit of meaning, and then I have a thought for the day after each chapter. So they're 2-page, 3-page chapters with a thought for the day, which sort of summarizes that thing. And I've gone at authenticity and honesty and personal responsibility in every way that I could think possible through, again, little anecdotal stories and just suggestions for behavior. And it's a part of my legacy now. Hopefully it soon will be. And I was shooting for the end of the year. COVID's pushed me back a little bit, but I talked to a couple of editors and publishers yesterday, and I'm about ready to, it's like a child when you let it go off to college or whatever. It's like, okay, you're on your own now. Here you go, and hope for the best. But
we should have a double book signing, actually, when your book comes out.
Okay.
And just let people get an opportunity to meet you, to get a book from you, and to be blessed, because you're absolutely right. Authentic self ties in with feeling satisfaction in your life, feeling like you have peace because you have stayed true to who you are, and having circled the orb of famous people and celebrities, famous athletes. I'm curious to know how many of those people, in your estimation, percentage-wise, did you feel were content with their life, and versus how many were not content, kind of in a state of misery, or maybe not misery, being lost? As I said, I've been blessed because I met so many different types of people and so many wonderful people, but one that comes to mind, high profile, is President Reagan. And I knew President Reagan as a candidate for governor, I knew him as a governor, and I knew him as a president.
and had the opportunity to go and have lunch at the White House with President Reagan one time, which is a wonderful story in and of itself. But the thing about it, and I didn't always get along with him, and I didn't always agree with what he was doing, but he was a master of communication, and he was a master of making sure that you understood what he wanted you to know, regardless of what you wanted to know. So I remember, and I tell the story, I was in a news conference one time, and I asked a question, and it had to do with the budgeting when he was a governor. And he gave me an answer that had nothing to do with the question I asked. Absolutely nothing. I mean, it was really out in left field. And it was in San Francisco, and the media there at the time was very polite, and so they allowed me a follow up. And so I asked the same question again, a little bit different words, but tried to get to the same thing. He gave me a second answer, had nothing to do with the question whatsoever. And the reporters in the room were actually laughing, and we were all laughing. They're looking at me, and so I raised my hand and said follow, and they let me ask the third question. And for the third time, I asked the same question, and he gave me a third completely different answer, which had nothing to do with the question I asked. And we all laughed and moved on because the television cameras were there and they were all rolling. So he got 3 answers that he wanted broadcast out of my question, which he didn't want to answer.
What was the question? I'm dying to know.
It was like, if they report the budget out of committee, is it going to have all of the elements that you're looking for or something like that? I mean, it wasn't a real important, serious question, but he used that as an opportunity to say 3 different things. And that's called spin doctoring, right?
Yes.
Because you take the question, but you move it around, take a word out of that question, and then give the answer that you want to give. So that was a wonderful experience. At the White House, he was so gracious to not only me, but the other people who were in our group. And it was like, what a great guy. I mean, you got to love him, even though at the day of that press conference, I just kind of shook my head and laughed because I thought I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
Another one that comes to mind is Mother Teresa, and I tell the story about her as well. But she was just such a little, small, petite person. And, her reputation is so big, and she affected so many millions of lives, and just really was such a powerful figure in our lifetime. And yet, when you met her physically, she was smaller than my daughter, who's tiny. Just a real small person. But when she spoke very softly, everyone could hear. There was I believe, a kind of a miracle that she had the ability to communicate in a really big way with a really soft voice. And it was powerful. And a lot of political and sports figures. And Bruce Willis is a great guy. Bruce, if you're watching, I think you're a great guy. I had a conversation with him one time for about a half an hour, and he was so down to earth and so real. And everything that you've seen him do in the movies and the kind of character that he is, that's who he is. He's the same person off camera as he is on camera.
So being true to whom God made you to be is the true secret of success. I think that's one of the greatest goals in a person's life. Mother Teresa, honored her divine appointment and who she was created to be. Bruce Willis sounds like he did the same thing. And Ronald Reagan, oh my God, he was hilarious. I'll never forget the debate with, was it Dole or something, where Dole brought up his, they were questioning his age, like at 70 or 82 or something, I forget, 70 something. And Dole brought it up that his competency for president was based on his age. And I just remember Ronald Reagan looking and goes, well, I'm glad that you brought that up because, I have a concern about, the age issue too. And I'm not so sure that being so young, you have enough wisdom to be like running for president. And he flipped it around. So you're right. He was a master of flipping things around and conveying what he wanted to convey. And he did it in such a way that it was so digestible. And most of the time it was really funny, right?
Yep.
Was that your experience?
Yep.
Wow, that's so cool. And now you just get to hang around, just little peon people that are wonderful. We have so many fantastic people. You're absolutely right. I totally agree. The people that have moved here just blows, just boom. It's It's like an epiphany.
And people that have lived here all their lives.
Oh, yes.
You know, to throw out another name, Woody Klein. I just have a real affection for the person. The first time I met him, it was like, okay, what you see is what you get. And he is the chairman of our board of supervisors. And just a wonderful human being.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and it just exudes common sense and down to earth and goodness. So
absolutely,
and can go on. I don't mean to leave anyone out. You know,
the history of this area is so deep, and you're absolutely right. The people that are born and raised here, that know everything, that have put up with the most amount of, probably eye rolling. Their legacies, they're so rich in history. And for those of you that have never seen the show, 2 years ago, December 21st, 2018, we had Jinx Pyle, one of my favorite people of all time in this town, great historian. If you haven't watched that show, you should. I have some of his books in my office. Great historian and wonderful human being. So, Cameron, do we have a couple of questions for Charlie? No?
Questions today, but I have one.
Okay.
Ah, he has one.
So I don't know if everybody can hear me. You might have to repeat this, but as a coach myself, I would love to hear your perception on teaching young kids and being a coach in today's modern world. What was that like? Because you were on a very high level.
Being a coach in the modern world is, I think what the best coaches do is they realize that every human being is different. We're all unique and we're all special, which is another element of finding your personal brand. There's no formula that you can aspire to necessarily, or no book you can read or direction that you can take. So if you realize that every one of the kids that you're coaching, or people that you're coaching, if you're doing it on an adult level, is unique, you have to find out who they are first, then you have to learn where their buttons are, and then you have to learn how to selectively push their buttons. Because with some athletes in particular, you have to kick them in the butt and you have to push them beyond. Others, you don't have to do that at all because they're so driven to be right. And sometimes you have to hold them back. And some people, you have to tell them constantly that you're just doing a really good job, even if they're not doing everything you want, but you need to reinforce and reinforce and reinforce. And with others, you can be very constructive in your criticism and say, it was okay, but you could do better if you would approach it this way and remember what we talked about in practice and how we learned these skills. So I guess it goes back to the concept of not trying to, and they say that, really great coaches, they say, well, they coach to the talent that they have on the team, as opposed to trying to say, I've got a formula. This is the offense we're going to run. This is the defense we're going to run. It doesn't matter who's on my team. We're always going to do it exactly the same.
That's Belichick.
Yeah. Well, Belichick is able, but he goes out and he has the ability, because of the resources that they have at the New England Patriots, to find the athletes that fit into his system that he can coach the way he wants to do it. But even with that, this year is a classic example, he's coaching very differently because they're running a very different kind of organization than they did a year ago or 2 years ago. So it's being aware of your players, their strengths and their weaknesses, and bringing out the best in them to the best of their ability. And I think that's the definition of what a good coach is.
Do you think, speaking of owners of teams, coaches, have you ever seen where, the coaches only have so much power, they're at the mercy of the owners. Do you see where higher ups have kiboshed great coaches in your circle, and how often does that occur? And what
regularly.
And why do you think that happens?
Ego. Mm-hmm. It's because the owner sometimes, not always, there are some exceptions, and I got to. Lamar Hunt was an exception. He was just a wonderful man, and he always let his coaches coach. And he never really interfered with what it was they were doing. He didn't always have the best coaches, but he worked with what he had. Mm-hmm. But there are other people who are so driven by their own egos that they can't restrain themselves. And George Steinbrenner was a classic example, right? The New York Yankees. Mm-hmm. He was an interfering owner, But when you met him privately, which I had the opportunity to do that too and spend some time with him, what a great guy. How could he have fired so many people so many times? Because he was so charming and personable and a very deep spiritual person and had great moral compass personally. But when he put on his owner hat, he kept messing with the team.
He wasn't designed to be that. Like he should have left that job to somebody else, really,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Too controlling, too ego-driven. I always find that fascinating. Why the higher ups love that I'm going to put the thumb on you thing, and it's sad for the team because the great coaches, if left alone and given enough time, could create an incredible success story. Yeah. And oftentimes they're not even given the chance.
No.
So, wow. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. In wrapping this up, because we're going to get an update from our mayor regarding COVID and some of the things going on in town. He wants to do a quick update. Charlie, where can people listen to you again? Will you tell them where they can find you on radio?
If you're online, you could go to KMOG, just type it in and find the homepage and hit the listen now, and you can listen to the program Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. If you're in the Payson area or the greater Rim country, you can find us on AM at 1420 or on FM at 103.3.
And you can stream live at kmogcountry.com. So if you're out of state and you want to listen to this wonderful man, join in. He's fascinating. You're wonderful. I'm so glad that you moved to Payson.
You're wonderful. Thank you for having me on your program.
It's so fun to have you and to learn more about you. And don't forget to buy his book, One Stupid Mistake. It's on Amazon. And get to know this guy. He is amazing. So Charlie, thank you. Thank you for being on the show. And we're going to have the mayor. We're going to take just a few seconds to transition the mayor into your spot, and feel free to stay if you want to listen in for a few more minutes. We'll be done shortly. But if the listeners will just hang tight, we're going to get our wonderful mayor in, Mayor Tom Morrissey, and hear what he's got to tell our community. Because we are under the threat a couple of days ago of maybe going into some serious situations. We all got the memo today, didn't we, for black?
Okay.
Thank you, Charlie. Here comes our wonderful mayor, Mr. Tom Morrissey. Mayor Morrissey is in the hot seat now. He's very good at the hot seat. Yeah, I don't have mine on. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I know you Mayor, thank you for joining us this morning. Do you want to talk to people a little bit about your thoughts on where we are with the COVID virus and what you're doing?
Well, I think thanks to President Trump and his administration, we're in a much better place now than we were when we had the first go-around with COVID. I think the facts are that COVID is a hybrid virus. It was manufactured. And in my opinion, it didn't come from eating bats in Hunan. It came out of a laboratory. And the impact that it's had on the world is incredible. And my feelings are that it was by design. But we've been able to get our footing again, and we are now managing a second wave. So what I did a couple of days ago was I reinstated the mandate on wearing face masks. Now, Deborah, and those of you watching, I want you to know that I do not. Matter of fact, I hate face masks. I brought mine on. This is. I'm a Freemason, so I have my Freemason face mask. If I had a choice, and there were any other possible remedy for what we are facing immediately, I would not resort to this. Last Saturday and Sunday, I was in the Valley, and I was wearing face mask. I was down there with my wife. We had a couple of days out of town. And everybody in the valley is wearing a face mask. Outside in the street, I saw past one guy that had a face mask on his dog. And I think it's getting to the point of being ridiculous. But here's what happened. I wore the same face mask for 2 days. Okay, I didn't change. And I came home with a bronchial problem. And so that's the other side of this issue, you know, with the face mask. There's two sciences on it, whether face masks are good or whether they're bad. So when the numbers spike to where they are, I had to make a decision. And I just had an argument with somebody on text over it, accusing me of being a Trump Nazi for doing it. So anyway, well, you know, it's Payson, folks. And when I moved here, I thought I was moving to Mayberry, and I found out that I didn't. But the thing is this: look, there's a constitutional consideration on this issue, and there's a health consideration. And what I did was, you know, I put them together, and I landed where I think is in the middle, that protects the constitutional rights of our citizens, guaranteed, and also addresses this uptick. Okay, so here's what I think. If at the end of a month, with the face mask mandate in place, the numbers continue to rise, what's that going to tell you? Your face masks don't work, pretty much. If they drop, what's that going to tell you? Face masks work. So somebody's got to be a grown-up with this thing. So I elected to reinstate the face mask mandate. I didn't do it with a smile on my face. When I came home after reinstating that, the locks on my house doors were changed because my wife doesn't like the face mask. But I'm only kidding, and she's probably going to.
She's going to kill you.
But the thing is, you know, we have to address this, you know, somehow. And the facts are that it really doesn't change things much. The business community is adhering to this mandate and have been adhering to it. I know when I first put this in place, and a few days after I put it in place, the first go around, I walked into Walmart, and I had my face mask on. Well, I got the stink eye from everybody that was in there. That was 2 days in. 2 weeks later, approximately, I walked in. I forgot my face mask. I was going in, and I got the stink eye from everybody who was wearing them. So what this is an education process. You know, if you sneeze or cough and you have a face mask on, you're not going to spread the germs. Okay, and the thing is, we need to, and here's my prime mission, to keep our businesses open, to keep our community free from a lockdown. We can't go through another lockdown, and we don't need to. But so my way of addressing it and my way of bringing it is by doing the face mask mandate. I had a conversation with Governor Ducey 2 days ago, and we talked about that. Governor Ducey does not want a lockdown in any way, shape, or form. 90% of the local governments and the county governments in the state have a face mask mandate. So let's give it some breathing room, folks. Let's give it a month or two. I just heard the coronavirus vaccine will be available at the beginning of December, and they're going to give it to the first responders and to the medical, and then to the aged seniors. And so I don't know if I'm going to get it, but I'm going to take it. I met a gentleman 2 days ago, a retired firefighter, who was part of the research, who took the vaccine, and he came through it smilingly. So now he's immune to the vaccine. So you know, we got to give some to get some. Let's work together, and let's not be shooting arrows at one another. You know, give it another month or two. If I'm wrong about the face mask, I've given you an inconvenience. If I'm right, we may have saved some lives, and we may have saved our financial structure. So, give it a month, give it 6 weeks. That's all I'm asking you to do. Work with us, okay, and go from there. And believe me, I am not a fan of face masks.
I know you're not, and you're just trying to protect our community and ask people to cooperate. I mean, you can't. Are you going to enforce it? Are you able to enforce it if you find someone that is out in the general public without a face mask?
I remember I said I weighed the Constitution and the town. Okay,
Just wanted to clarify.
I'm an originalist. Okay, and if I say we're not going to enforce it, then we say, well, we're not going to do it. But here's the thing: we have to bring it to a place where it's a law and it has to be respected. But I'll be the last person in the world that's going to have somebody dragged down the street in handcuffs over this issue. Mainly, this is an educational tool to the community, and it worked the first time because people are now wearing face masks. Now you get down to Scottsdale, it's a little bit off the paper. I mean, really, when you see, everybody, people are running, jogging with face masks on, out in the open. I mean, I don't think that that's necessary, but that's their decision.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the medical community is grateful because they're the ones that are exposed to it constantly, and the fewer people they have to deal with, the better it is for them and their families too, because they have to go home at night. So I think it's if we just keep the cooperative spirit, knowing that you're just trying to protect people. I think most citizens are compliant and will be happy to do what you have asked us to do. So I thank you for the update.
One question.
Yeah, there's one question.
Turkey Trot, Electric Light Parade still happening, both of them?
That's what I hear. And I hope the Electric Light Parade's happen because I'm going to be there. I don't want to be the only one.
So the Electric Light Parade is December 7th. I think the 4th is the 5th.
I think it's the 5th, the Saturday.
Okay. Yeah, Saturday. It's the 5th, December 5th. So the Turkey Trot is going on, and that's just this weekend. So we're still going to do those two things, and
also Main Street. They're doing a thing on Main Street. They're going to do a tree lighting, and I think it's the 28th. And I'm going to light the tree. Hopefully I don't get electrocuted lighting the tree. But they're going to have characters from the movie Frozen. They're going to have Christmas characters and dancing trees on Main Street. And it's 6 o'clock.
The creator of the dancing tree is right behind the camera.
Karen, did you create the dancing trees?
I did.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
It is so cool.
Yeah.
And our first Fiesta Bowl parade win that we created.
Payson won the first Fiesta Bowl parade win thanks to Cameron Davis, who was our former tourism director and who did a fabulous job.
Yes,
and for those of you that don't know, I am going to be moving my office to 602 West Main Street in December. So I'm going to join that historical crowd, and I'm going to be a steward of a really old building. So I'm really, really excited. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. We've had an exceptional interview with Charlie Seraphin, and thank you, Mayor, for the COVID update. Let's all try to do our part, and until next time, we'll see you again.